Welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Score podcast. As usual, I'm always excited to be here. Love doing this and love talking about sports. Josh, I don't know about you, but there's a lot of crazy things happening in the sports world, but there's also a lot of crazy things happening in our world. And I do want to give a second to just say that I did lose a family member, close member, a family friend of mine this past weekend, and it was just truly heartbreaking for anyone involved. And I just wanted to extend my condolences out to the Tabipian family for their loss, if any of them are listening to this. I love you guys. You guys are in my hearts, and I'm hoping for, you guys to get through this. It's never easy, but I love you guys, and just wanted to give you guys a little bit of respect there.
Prayers up from everyone over here. I'm sure Ben would say the same thing. We could talk about sports all day, but there's certain things that are bigger than sports. So,
Of course, prayers to their family and friends.
There are, and on that note, let's get into some of the positive stuff. Sports world kind of brings us up when we're having bad days. We're able to put the TV on and tune into a game and really be able to zone into that, and that's what sports are for, right? Sports are for people, fans, to be able to watch their favorite team and forget about, for at least those 2 to 3 hours in their day, to forget about other things that might be problems or worries in their lives, but to go and enjoy a great event, whether it's football or baseball, whatever you like, whatever you're watching. That's what sports does. It gives us a reason to root and cheer and support and love. And so, that's why we do what we do here too. We love talking about sports. We love sports because sports is bigger than what it is, for at least people like us. I don't know if you could agree with me, Josh, over there, but sports is, an important thing for us big fans.
It's healing in so many ways, and it just brings a lot of happiness, a lot of joy from kids to the elders and everyone in between.
There's a lot of crazy things that happen. I mean, let's kind of get into this in the NBA world. I mean, actually, before we get into the NBA, I missed number 2 over here. We got to congrats to the great state of Florida for winning the college basketball championship. I did doubt them. You didn't, but I did a little bit. I was like, I don't know about them. But they did it. I mean, they played great brand of basketball. A little shaky during that UConn game, but since then, I mean, after that game, they tidied it up and they said, all right, we're not going to let things slide around. We don't want anyone.
Had to make sure to shout out the game against your champion.
Well, listen, at the end of the day, we had 4-1 seats in the Final Four. So, I mean, it wasn't one of those scenarios where you could pluck a team from, a Cinderella story, say, and get them in there, because that didn't happen. I guess the 1 seeds were just, it's not a guess. They all got there. They were all just too strong. Houston, Auburn, Duke, and Florida. I mean, they were all 4 juggernaut teams. Houston, I mean, they played their hearts out. I don't know how you felt about that game, that final game, but I mean, that last play was kind of brutal. They couldn't get a shot up at the end over there, but they played their hearts out. I mean, it was a great game overall, and this was one of the best probably basketball games we've seen in a long time. I mean, comparing every aspect of the game, NBA, overseas, the Olympics, FIBA, everything. This was a great game overall, up and down.
Yeah. No, I was just frustrated in the Duke game that in such a great game, the bad call on Cooper Flag was what flipped it from 67-68 to 69-68. And I feel like looking at it, it's such a let them play. Like it doesn't mean that Duke would have won if they didn't call that, but I just hate when you're watching a full game and then it's going back and forth, then all of a sudden something like that happens. And I think that call was egregious, to be honest.
So do you think that call against in the game Florida versus UConn, that was, a lot of people said, a decisive call that gave Florida that win? How do you feel about that in that scenario? Because the truth is, with a lot of these calls, regardless, I mean, even if they seem like to a lot of people that it should have been called, some people will say, well, it shouldn't have been called. It's all an opinion up until, I guess, it's unanimous, which we never get in today's society, right? Whether it's a crazy call that we see, some people might come out there and say it shouldn't have been a call, play on. But if you had to, considering how these calls could, change the course of the game, considering what happened in that game, in the Duke game, and then, what happened in that UConn game, what do you think?
To be honest, that Florida UConn game, was a day that I was out bowling, so I did not see it. But anytime that when it's down there, when the teams are working hard, when it's a game that just has natural flow and the guys are giving it their all and they're not disrespecting the game or their opponent and they're just playing hard. Sometimes you just gotta let something if it was comparable to that, which it seems like it is if you brought it up, I would definitely say that I would definitely say that you just it when in doubt, let them play. And I ha- so was that you saying that you agree about that, or you just more leaving it in the air, just saying whatever it is, the officiating is something that you don't want to see impact, just like I said.
Well, wrong calls happen way too often. It just seems like we can't prevent them from happening. It doesn't matter what the sport is. We've seen crazy things. I mean, you're a Saints fan, and you've lived through some horrible calls,
Like,
right? And we have to take what the refs give us,
yeah,
unless there are things that the associations come together and say we can, maybe figure out a path to clear up some of these terrible calls that happen. For instance, the NFL, and this is why I think the NFL did something brilliant with the instant replays, right? And so it doesn't take a lot of time. The ref makes a call, but quickly, every game is being watched from New York. They see and they
mhm,
say, this shouldn't have been a flag. And then they immediately signal down to the refs. They say, ref, pick up the flag. Ref picks up the flag. It's not in the ref's hands anymore. It's now in the
yeah,
in the league's hands to make the right call. And so at least with that, it gives you a little bit of comfort knowing that if it was a really bad call, that at least in the NFL, they'll rectify it. For the most
yeah,
part, it's not perfect yet because there's some calls that can't be overturned or some that should have been a flag that weren't given the flag,
sure,
things like that. But it seems like that's a stepping stone to get to the right place. Hopefully, other sports like the NBA and the MLB, I mean, the MLB, right, with the
mhm,
check over on the strike three call over there. Was that a strike? No, it
yeah.
wasn't. Worked out pretty well. I mean, if you ask me in spring training, so hopefully maybe in 2026, the MLB will put that into the system for the regular season.
You see the
Now,
savagery that the players are doing now, that when they don't like a call, they'll just tap their helmet. Obviously, there's no real
one
challenge
one
there.
day there's going to be an umpire and it's going to suck. They're going to throw them out for doing that because they're
Well,
going to
they are
think it's
the
insulting.
couple times it's happened,
They've been thrown
they've
out.
s they've said, "Do that again and you're gone."
Oh, well, so there's your warnings.
I think that's fair because, like, the call
Listen,
was questionable, and, like, you don't toss them, but
what these guys do is very difficult, right?
yeah,
I mean, yes, they get paid a lot of money, these refs and these umpires. And I'll tell you right now, you can't just pluck someone from the middle of the street and say, go do what they're doing, pay them half the salary and say, well, figure it out. There's a lot of training and a lot of things that go into becoming an umpire and a referee. Split decision, calls in half a second, right? Especially in baseball, but also in other sports too. So yes, as much as we hold our refs and these umpires to a higher standard, it's very difficult what they do, right? And I think if we considered 50 years ago, 30 years ago, when things weren't on TV, on media, and recorded, there was probably a lot of errors being made all throughout. And we just never picked up on it. Now, because everything is social media, everything is online, and you could see everything 14,000 times, then now you could pick up on everything and criticize all these refs. When the truth is, yes, they're not perfect. They made terrible calls. I think each league should consider protocols to put in place to say, hey, listen, let's rectify these in a quick manner,
yeah,
right? Like, I don't like how the NBA does, if you hit a two or you made a three, but they ruled it a two and then they review it, like that could affect the game too, depending on when that happens, because
yeah, I see what you're saying.
now they won't check that and make that adjustment on the score until like a stoppage when there's a timeout or end of the quarter. And now you come back and now it's a different score and you're like, what happened, right? Because that
Yeah,
could affect your play calling, right? Depending on what the score is, right?
yeah, exactly.
And so,
It
I think there needs to be a lot of things worked on. But I
And I
think
think that when it comes to that specific scenario, if you're not sure, just take the 2 seconds and stop it. It's not like if the shot clearly went in, so you can just stop the play for a second. There's no fast break you're stopping. Just if you stop it for 2 seconds there, I'm sure we could have the technology that you could go bang, bang, bang. His toe is on the line. That's a 2, and
well,
that's
I
it.
don't I don't think stopping at all is the key, right? I think that's the reason why they're not doing it. They don't want to affect the game flow, right? If you're a team with momentum and now all of a sudden you got to check to see if this is a three instead of a two and you're, taking 15 seconds, even 10 seconds, you're stopping momentum, especially in NBA.
Right, but you can't have it both ways. You
Well,
got to pick.
I think it should be relatively quick with that specific aspect,
That's
right?
what I'm saying.
I mean, it
That's what I'm
shouldn't be
saying.
a stoppage of play. If the ref calls it a 2 on the inbound on that next possession, it should be changed. It shouldn't even be checked by the refs.
You know what I'm thinking about?
Let upstairs do it and let it happen immediately, not on the next stoppage.
You know the Toronto practice court that they have it's completely glass that they draw plays on it. Like the coach has an iPad and he
Yes,
draws.
yes. I think a lot of teams
So
have those now.
so I think if they had something like that in the actual league, then you have a ref watching that when the shot goes up, he makes the line light up if the three goes in. I think that'd be cool. Like if
Oh,
they hit
you're
a
saying
three,
like an actual like floor that lights up like that?
yeah, like it could look like a regular floor,
I mean,
but
it would look cool.
when someone hits a three, you just like you could shoot the team color of the home team across, or you could just make it flash or
That
whatever. So
seems like an
something
interesting concept. It looks fun, sounds fun. Imagine you start putting lights on the
can't
court.
hurt the game.
I don't think it can. I mean, at least from initial thought, it doesn't seem like it. If anything, it makes it seem a little bit more fun, right? You get some colors on
Yeah.
the court, look a little different. I mean, who knows? There's probably going to need to be some test trials done on that in terms of how does it affect anything? Does it affect these players' vision if something lights up and now all of a sudden somebody's blinded by this light? I don't know. I'm thinking anything, but it sounds like a really good concept.
Or maybe it literally just changes from like black to white just after the ball goes in until they come back up the court for that 2 seconds.
Whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
hopefully, not only the NBA, but all these leagues come up with smart protocols so that we're not bashing these refs who are trying to do a great job at what they do. Obviously, they're not trying to do bad calls here, unless they're getting a little money out of the table here. But let's assume not for a second here, and they're straightforward referees and umpires. I don't want to see people bashing these refs, and hopefully there's a protocol that's put in place that changes these things, and we just want to correct the game, right? We just want to make the game better. How do we make that better? Is by brainstorming, figuring out what's not working currently. The truth is, the NBA, it's not in a great place right now. It really isn't.
Yeah.
Viewership is at an all-time low. People aren't as committed to watching these games. It's because the game has changed so much, and part of it is because refs. So,
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. And if there's any major changes that do happen, these are things that we love to talk about because they're innovative parts of the sport. When there's a rule change or there's implementations on these refs and things like that, we like to talk about it. But congrats to Florida. I mean, that was the initial part of this whole conversation. Let's not steer away from the brilliance that they did play throughout the whole entire tournament, throughout the whole entire regular season. They deserve their kudos. The state of Florida is very happy. I will say a lot of Florida fans down here are thrilled that their team is back on top of the college basketball world. And, see if they can redo it next season. I mean, they should be a good team for a couple of years. But, you never know what happens in sports in general. So let's move on. Let's move on from college. We'll move on to the NBA. Crazy things have happened recently. I mean, 2 head coaches on playoff teams were fired with a handful of games remaining, let's say. Mike Malone and Taylor Jenkins. Now, before I get into what I thought was happening here, I'd like to hear, I know that this isn't something you can care anything really about. I know you're focused on your Thunder. I'm focused on my Cavs. But, I mean, when you see something like this happening, few games left into the season. I mean, we're heading into the playoffs. This is the Denver Nuggets. We're talking about the 2021 NBA, 2022 NBA champions here. And we're talking about the Memphis Grizzlies, 2 teams that are playoff teams. And yes, what I will say is there was a lot of fluctuation in the standings in the Western Conference. It was crazy. Like every single couple of days I would look and a 2 seed would go from like 2 to 6. And then like the 7 would go to like 2. The only thing that wasn't changing was the 1 seed and anything from like 12 to 15.
Yeah.
That was the only thing that wasn't changing. Everything else in the middle was changing. But I want to hear what you thought. I know it just sounds so weird in this situation. Like, how do you expect to rebound and make runs in the playoffs?
Well, I mean, part of the reason why it seems so crazy is because like 2/3 of the league makes the playoffs. So these are both playoff teams technically, but the Nuggets fired Mike Malone and the Grizzlies fired Taylor Jenkins, both 47 and 32 this year. By the way, I don't think that for all the people who think Joker should be the MVP, I don't think that the MVP gets their coach fired. But
I mean
um,
that has to automatically. I don't mean to cut you off, but that has to automatically. Like, listen, I can get like some people saying he's putting up great numbers, but that right there, you're done.
yeah,
Dunzo.
exactly. But I just think that I think the Grizzlies are making a terrible mistake. I almost think that they want someone who can kind of baby Ja a little bit. I think that Taylor Jenkins kind of brought the swag back to Memphis, brought the grit, and he kind of doesn't really care what Ja does on the court as long as he's balling, which these gun celebrations are really stupid when you got warnings and you just don't care. That's part of the problem with so much money being in the game when you're an influence to little kids, and now little kids are gonna hit threes and hold pretend rifles and think that they're cool like they're idol John Morant. And I think that they want someone who's gonna kind of have him harden him up a little bit, make him grow up a little bit. Fantastic player, fantastic hooper. But there's no other reason why a change was necessary there. I feel like it was a tough draw with certain injuries that came up through the year, and to be ahead of the likes of Minnesota and Phoenix. I mean, we don't have to talk about Phoenix right now, but based on preseason expectations, I think that that's something that should be applauded as opposed to where he like the fact that he got fired. And then Mike Malone, it's really I mean, you could argue that Joker covers a lot of the issues that Mike Malone's teams have had, but you have Joker and you have a team that's a top team in the West. Yeah, maybe they faltered out of the 2 seed, but I think the fact of the matter is that they've been good. He brought them a championship, and I guess it's just time for a new regime there. But it's very, very interesting to do it right before the playoffs when unless they're gonna bring George Karl back or something. I don't know how they're gonna be ready.
Damn, George Karl. I don't know. Listen, George Karl, great head coach back in the day for the Denver Nuggets. I don't know what condition that man is in currently. I mean, he's
Oh
battled
yeah, I
two
don't know.
stages of cancer. He's in his 80s, but if he somehow came back, didn't they actually bring him back?
I thought
Like a
so.
few years ago, like he came back for like half a year or something, or was that? Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did,
I thought it was him too.
right? And so, I mean, listen, great head coach, but I mean, it's
Hmm.
safe to say that Taylor Jenkins and Mike Malone are going to find jobs next season. They're going to be a head coach again in the NBA. Maybe not next season, but they will be a head coach in the NBA again. Another truth
Hmm.
is we're focused on the Western Conference here. The Thunder are on their own island, right? They're on Thunder Island right
Hmm.
now. And then you have the
13
two
games ahead.
seed through like the 8 seed, maybe even like the 9 seed, fluctuating. I mean, there was no clear cut number two in the Western Conference, right? You have the Lakers, you have the Timberwolves, you have the Grizzlies, you have the Nuggets. All these teams that are kind of, and I mean, some of them fell off, like the Mavericks fell off because of their injuries and things. But you have all these teams that are fluctuating back and forth between the
And trading
standings.
the best player arguably in their franchise history besides Dirk.
Right, exactly. I mean, you could even say maybe he was up until that
He would
trade.
have been. He
That
would
trade,
have been.
yeah, I agree. He would have definitely have been, but Dirk won a championship, so I think I have to give it to Dirk, and obviously he played there for 20 years. So, but besides the point here is that these teams, I wouldn't blame their head coaches necessarily for the problems, right? I mean, Mike Malone's won an NBA championship. What has that roster done since that championship, right? And the NBA is an ever evolving game where if you don't consistently add to your roster, you're going to get beat eventually. What
Yeah.
is different about this Nuggets team than the one that won 3 years ago?
Yeah, I agree more with the GM going in Denver. I don't think the coach was the problem, and with the Grizzlies, I think they made a terrible mistake. I
I
think
think
they
a
should
lot of the
have
problems is that there's a relationship between head coach and GM. And usually, if one goes, the other one's like, I have to go with them. Now, there is no reason we haven't heard
I think
why these
not
firings
the other way
happened.
around. Like if the coach goes, the GM doesn't always go. But I guess if the GM was going,
Well,
maybe.
what I meant was it's not every scenario, but there are scenarios where they have a great relationship because they came in together. And so if
Mhm.
you fire one, you fire the other one, regardless
Yeah.
of regardless of who's getting fired. It just seemed like that's what happened here in this scenario because there's no reason, right? I mean, you want to say performance. Well, they're 15 games over 500. They're going to make the playoffs. And this team with Jokic, once they get into the playoffs, they're going to turn it up because that's where, like for instance, the Celtics. Why aren't the Celtics so dominant in the regular season? Yes, they dealt with some injuries, but it's because the truth is, and I know this as a Cavs fan, they're reserving their best basketball for the playoffs because that's the time when it really only matters, right? And so what's going to happen now when the Denver Nuggets now have a interim coach, probably one of their associate coaches, take over, and the Grizzlies too, right? Both teams, 47 and 32, both have a superstar on their team. Both have decent rosters built around them. Maybe not the best, but good enough for the playoffs. And then fire them. What do you expect from this season? Now, you think that you have a better chance now to beat the Thunder in a 7-game series than you did before? I absolutely don't think so. I mean, I don't think the Thunder were going to lose regardless, but if you think, listen, playoff basketball, intensities change, things happen. Now with at least those two specific teams, I don't think they have a shot. If they're facing the Thunder, they might as well not even unpack their bags in the hotel rooms when they're on away games. They're wrapping up that series quick. Okay?
For sure.
And so, you look at the rest of that Western Conference, what are your threats? The Lakers? Well, they don't have a big man. Yeah, they have Luka, they have LeBron, and they'll make some noise, but then again, you face that Thunder team, that 1-seed team, it's not going to be pretty for any of those Western Conference teams. So these firings really made no sense. I think the best thing these teams could have done was see how the rest of the season went, and then they could have made that decision in the offseason, right? I mean, what positivities do you get from doing this? How does this help your team right now for this immediate playoff run?
It seems like
it's
all fluff. I looked up the quote of the VP, vice chairman. He was saying there were certain trends that were very worrisome to me at different points that were masked by a few wins here and there, but basically saying that they're looking to spark the team. But I feel like if this was something that you were thinking about, you should have given them more time to. I mean, to me, it's kind of waving the flag that you're basically saying that you're not as good as you started the year as, and you're okay with whatever hiccups may come from this change, and almost want to use it as an excuse instead of actually facing the fact where I mean, the GM could have added pieces, they could have constructed the roster differently, but looking at it as a whole, I feel like the core players weren't really. I mean, MPJ, Jamal Murray, solid. They won a championship, but everyone's gonna come for your neck once you and your team have won. And like you said, they haven't changed anything. So,
Correct. Now, Jamal Murray's one of those other guys that lights it up in the playoffs too, but
yeah,
you have a short leash, right? You want to spark your team. Maybe you do this, a week after the All-Star break. You still have some time for adjustments. God forbid that needs to happen. I mean, this close. Listen, I don't get paid the big bucks to make these decisions, and so we'll see how this happens. But I can guarantee you, anyone who's viewing, once the season does wrap up, we're going to give a little recap on how their Grizzlies and the Grizzlies and the Nuggets seasons ended up wrapping up. Now, if they end up winning a championship somehow, we're gonna have to figure out something that I'll be mind blown. I mean, it's not happening. But if they somehow did, we'll figure something. Ben, get creative. Figure out something that Harry's got to do if the Grizzlies or the Grizzlies or the Nuggets win the championship. I don't think it's happening. I don't think there's a shot in hell it's happening. But if it does,
how about this? You got to go to the parade. If they win the championship, you got to go to the parade.
I'll go to the parade and I'll hold a sign that says "You didn't deserve this." Something like that. We'll figure something out. It's in play. Write it down. We'll write that down. Yeah.
Maybe don't do that in Memphis.
Yeah, Memphis, I'm not sure I'll walk out of that city alive, honestly. But we'll see what happens. Let's move on from basketball talk a little bit. We talked a lot about basketball. Got some football. We haven't talked a lot about football lately. And, the draft's coming up in a couple of weeks, so we might as well evaluate some of these teams that have higher picks. Obviously, I'm repping my Giants over here, too, because one of the teams we're going to be talking about are those New York Giants, who have the number 3 pick in the draft. Josh somehow thinks that they need a quarterback when they have Russell Wilson, who is the GOAT.
I don't know if you're being sarcastic.
I just wanted to see what your reaction was when I said that. I didn't hear anything. So
I didn't think you were serious to calling him the GOAT, so I just kind of let it slide.
Well, listen, I mean, I don't want the Giants to draft a quarterback. I personally
Mhm.
would rather wait and build. At number 3, if they can somehow land Travis Hunter, I'd love that. I think that would be
Mhm.
an explosive player who, whatever ends up being the case with him, if he's going to play offense or defense, he's going to be great. I'd love to see that because why sign Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston and Tommy DeVito could easily be cut, but I think Russell Wilson still has some great football left in him. I mean, he hasn't played bad except for that 1 year in Denver 3 years ago. So why are we automatically thinking that this guy can't play good caliber football? Let's remind everybody that Russell Wilson did win a Super Bowl very early on in his career. So I'm not saying that this New York Giants team is even going to make the playoffs, but I just think we take the best player available. And, listen, at the end of the day, Travis Hunter could go number 1. And then
Mhm.
you're in that tough situation where what do you do? Do you trade back? Do you maybe take a quarterback? What do you do? And so I think the Giants ultimately will take the best player available. That being said, that could be anybody. I hope it's not a quarterback. Offensive line, they could use maybe another upgrade, but for the first half of
Mhm.
last season, they were pretty strong. I think once the season started falling apart, you lose motivation, and it's not the best case scenario. You want players that are going to play their hearts out no matter what. But I think the offensive line is better than it's been over the last 5, 6 years, let's say. I think we have a better O line than some of these other teams do, but this
Mhm.
team is still far, far away from being an actual contender, especially with the Eagles and the Commanders, and I don't even know what to call these Cowboys, but um, they need to draft correctly, and I think they should look to take Travis Hunter at number 3. They could look to take a
Mhm.
quarterback later on, and then you'd release Tommy, and let him go someplace else or whatever ends up being the case. He'll
Yeah.
probably end up being like a practice squad quarterback. And then you, you,
Yeah.
you just have to go down the rest of that draft and make the best decisions because the truth is for that front office, this is going to be their critical time. If they mess up, Joe Shane's not going to be the GM of the New York Giants next season. Brian Dable most likely won't also be the head coach either.
Mhm.
And so they need to make some good decisions here on the draft and make sure that they do the right thing here. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think for the Giants, I actually wanted to preface my thought on the Giants with saying I do think that everything is smoke and mirrors, and I do think that Hunter will go number 1. So I obviously this is no binding, this is no guarantee, but with that fact, I have the Giants going Abdul Carter.
it's
I
not a bad
think that
option. He's a great
I think
linebacker.
I think I think he's the best player in the draft. Hot take.
It is a hot
Um,
take, but it's not a terrible take.
because Travis Hunter is a great athlete, but I think that Abdul Carter is the guy you get when you bring in Russell Wilson that'll make a sooner impact than Travis Hunter. I think that when you look at that team, yeah, QB is a long-term thing. I didn't really look at like the order of it saying need one more than the other. I just wrote down a couple of needs that I thought that the teams needed. I do think they're the destination for someone like um what's that guy's name? Quinn Ewers in the later rounds or one of those mid-round guys that like or even later on like um Joe Milton, that type of guy to just develop and see how it goes. But I think Abdul Carter to the Giants would put him with Brian Burns. I think that the 100-point difference that we were talking about last episode, I think that you could pretty much put it in the books that they'll go back in the other direction if you have Abdul Carter there with all the guys they already have on that line.
So the Titans are not taking a quarterback. You're saying you believe that they believe in Will Levis?
I think that it will either be a trade or it will be Travis Hunter just going best available, and there's plenty of veterans still out there, people they could trade for. I do think there's a chance they go a quarterback, but I think that when when you're building a team from scratch, which I feel like they're doing, you have to start with the best player. So obviously the quarterback is the most important position, but you want to make sure you get that right. So if you have Travis Hunter and you can also see where he fits in the offense, if he fits where he fits in the defense, maybe he's more of a receiver than we thought, so he becomes a slot corner just to keep him fresh. We see, but I think that that's a good team for him to go to.
Well, currently, it seems like most of the polls have Cam Ward going number one. Who knows what's going to happen, right? I mean, this is not one of those drafts where it's a surefire, definite number one is going to be this person.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. But the
Yeah.
Giants still have a lot of holes, and they need to make sure that the draft is a successful one so that their front office can stay put and their head coach can stay put.
All right, fine. I didn't want to give myself away, but I do actually think that there will be a slight trade from number 2 to number 1 with the Cleveland Browns, because I knew we were going to talk about the Browns next.
Mhm.
I think they, with the Titans being uncertain and wanting to go best player available, I think that they take some assets to from the Browns where the Browns go get Cam Ward and make a good decision for a change.
I think Browns go get Cam Ward if they have the one pick, the number one pick, 100%. Ownership is fed up in the fact that they paid Deshaun Watson as much money as they did. So, I think regardless if they trade up or not, they're going to have an option to take a quarterback at number two. Are they going to take Shador? Probably not, because Shador probably doesn't want to play in Cleveland. And so I think they're going to look at that like, do we really want to deal with that scenario?
I would sooner see Shador going in the second round than going number 1,
Wow, that is a very hot take.
just in terms of skill level. I think that, I mean, you could see these ranks have him ranked 25th, 27th best player.
Guy can throw the
I don't,
football.
yeah,
He can throw that thing far.
yeah. I mean, if you want to get technical, I'm pretty sure that terrible guy Ian Book from the Saints can throw the ball far too. But
Listen, I think the Saints just never gave him a fair shot.
nah, he was terrible.
Who was the
He was
other?
great in college. He was
Who,
great in college, but
who was the other quarterback that the Saints had recently who was just in their system that never ended up playing?
was it Trevor Simeon?
No, I think it didn't. Maybe it was just Ian Book. Anyways, I think the Browns ultimately will stay at number two. I think they're going to get a clear idea of what the Titans are going to do.
Hmm.
And then, listen, I have the Titans taking Cam Ward at one.
Hmm.
But if the Browns are not able to get Cam Ward at number two, they're going to trade back. I think that's what happens. They'll go take either Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milrow in the second round. Like you said, maybe Shador falls in the second round, and they'll take a shot in the second round on the guy. But I think at number two, they'll take also the best player available at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
If they lose Cam Ward, at least they're not going to take. They're not going to push a quarterback at number two. They'll go and they'll figure something out. Maybe they'll sway Aaron Rodgers somehow to go play for the Cleveland Browns. But it seems like at that point they shouldn't force the Shador at number two. If they can't
Yeah.
get Cam Ward at number two, if they can't make that trade happen at number one, depending on what they think the Titans are going to do, they should trade back. Probably the best thing for that organization.
And
Get some more assets.
let me also tell you, going back to the Giants, also, I think Jameis Winston is a great thing for them too to have a nice backup. But I think that quarterback being in need, I don't know why it just hit me going back to the Giants, but Jameis Winston is a good player. Russell Wilson's a good player, but you want what better environment to grow a quarterback that a second or third round talent than someone who's won the Super Bowl and someone who was the number 1 pick. So, and yeah, has certain records, good ones, bad ones.
I don't mind Jalen Milrow in the second round for the Giants.
Yeah,
I just think that right now in the first round, let's get the best available player.
yeah, I think that too.
Let's go on to your team, the Saints.
Yeah,
Ninth overall pick, so it's a little bit more interesting because you don't really know what's exactly going to happen
yeah, we're
there.
not even good at sucking.
Well, listen, I think at the end of the day, the Saints have more assets than the Browns and the Giants do. So, especially in that division, you never really know what's going to happen. I think Derek Carr is still a guy who could throw the football, whether or not
Yeah,
that organization believes in it or you believe in it as a fan of the team.
I don't know how I feel about it, to be
I
honest.
think you got to give him at least another opportunity. Prove it, right? If you really, you could say give him a short lease, let him start 6 games and see what happens, right? But Derek Carr is more than capable football player, and he's a good
Hmm.
quarterback. And I think, listen, if you put the right tools around him, he'll get the job done. Head coach, switch up was obviously rough, and we'll see what happens with that team. I mean, you're the one who knows more about what their needs
I've
are.
got,
Wide receiver. I mean, Chris
I've kind of a
Olave.
hot take about what the Saints are gonna do. I think with the ninth pick, they get Armin Membu, a guy I don't really know how to pronounce his name, but he's a perfect fit because we need more of a guard than a tackle, but he has experience with both. His knock is nothing about his game, just that he's a little shorter than most tackles, so it seems like it'd be a natural progression to make him just one of the league's elite guards. And I do think that we trade Olave to Arizona for pick 16 and get Matthew Golden.
Well, the truth is, how easy is it to trade Chris Olave, considering what is his status looking like? I mean, there's
Yeah,
people I've heard say that this guy's never going to play football again.
yeah. I mean, I don't think that's the truth because I think he would have retired if that was the case. It's not like he's even gotten his next deal. Like I think that he's going to give it a go. I think that the Cardinals are kind of a team that you put Olave in that offense and it makes like put him with Marvin, and I just think that with Trey McBride, they just paid him. They get a year of Olave like that, and then they extend him reasonably, and I think that
I mean, line him up
that
right
could
next to
make
Marv is going to make things interesting for sure. Now, I mean,
exactly.
you have the Saints needing a wide receiver though, and then somehow trading their best wide receiver
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about that. Then we got to wrap up this NFL and we'll get our fan question in. But I'm kind of interested to know what your thoughts
Yeah,
are.
for sure. I do think that just wide receiver depth over. I mean, I do think Matthew Golden would be a stud. I think that it would be a perfect replacement. I think Shahid's good, but besides that, we need another guy, maybe a big body leader in the like Nick Nash or someone like that that has the numbers but didn't really play at the big school. Someone we could coach up. I think that that would be a really good fit. But I think that Olave for Golden would be a type of Diggs for Jefferson workout for both sides type deal.
Well, it'd save you some money too, paying a
Yeah.
rookie receiver instead of
Yeah, and we need that. We're always in a terrible cap situation.
exactly. Well, we'll see what happens. Draft's going to be the 24th through the 26th. I'm excited. I'm certain you are. I'm certain all our viewers are as well. It's one of the best times for NFL. You get to see what your team starts picking at and hope that it completes the rest of your roster out. But let's get
Yeah.
into our fan question. Matt, as usual, back at it with a great question. We're going to let our great producer, Ben, come in here and let us know. It's a shorter question this time, so
Yeah.
it'll be quick.
You guys caught me off guard, and
Mm.
I don't have the document up.
Well, I'm going to read the question, then I'm
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
just go.
yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna do a little different today. So Matt's question is,
Mm.
why do so many other sports trade draft picks compared to baseball? Good question. I'm going to get right into it. I think the truth really comes down to that. You know, in baseball, especially for these lower market teams, they need their early draft picks to help them get through the first 6 years of this player's career in the MLB. That's another thing, right? In the NBA, in the NFL, you get 4 years of a contract. On the NFL, you also have a fifth-year option potentially, and the tags. But in the MLB, you have 3 years of pre-arbitration if you qualify based on how many games you play. Then you have 3 years of arbitration. So the player is locked into the organization unless the organization doesn't want them for 6 seasons. So for a team like, let's say, the Pittsburgh Pirates or the Tampa Bay Rays, who are consistently drafting at the top, these are very valuable assets for them. They're not going to go and trade that pick for a superstar or a couple of players to help build out their roster. They need that specific individual to help build
Yeah.
out, the future of the organization. Another truth is these teams are very good at picking the best talent in the draft, right? And
Yeah.
so when they make these decisions, they know that they're going to be able to groom them into being a very solid player for that organization. That is why we don't see a lot of these draft picks get traded in baseball. It just doesn't make sense for organizations. They'd rather build out, have this player in their system, potentially at 18 years old, straight out of high school maybe, have them in the system for a couple of years in the minor leagues, and then bring them up at 20 years old and have them for another 6 years, control
Yeah.
a lot of this player. And then on top of the fact is, if you could lock in that player over the first 3 years to a long-term deal, like we've seen a lot of these teams start doing with Bobby Witt and Julio Rodriguez, and we could name a few other players, that's starting to be the trend is get them early on and then groom them to love that organization so they stay for the long term. That's why we love
Yeah.
baseball. At least for me, I love the loyalty that some of these players have.
For
If you
sure.
give them a contract early on, they don't need to take the most money. They will leave money on the table. They'll say we'll take the guarantee now, which is a beautiful thing. And so
Yeah, and I think one thing with baseball too You look at hockey; they trade picks kind of to get something for depreciating assets. NBA and NFL, the the picks have much more immediate value because you're getting a player that's going to play on your team right now. So the trade can GMs can kind of save their jobs with trading for some picks and getting guys that will make an impact now, make them look good, make the team look good, get the team back on track. And I think that also when you look at the full scope of it, the MLB just started allowing pick trading. So I think also another thing with that is you don't even really know what the trade value of a pick is because you like Harry said, you don't know because if it's a guy who will be a star and he's a late bloomer that you draft, you could wait 5 years for this guy, and the guy you trade could win 3 rings somewhere else, and then you in that 5th year, the guy could blow his knee out, and then obviously injuries are always a thing, but it's just if he's on the field year one and he's making an impact and he gets hurt, that's way different than the fans have been waiting for player X, and he's finally here. Let's see if he's worth the trade that he was, and then yeah.
Well, there you have it. Our take on what we expect, to happen with these trades during drafts. It's not going to happen for the MLB. I just don't think it makes sense. But
Yeah.
great question, Matt. Thank you so much. Josh, I got to ask you, do we have time for the 60-second rapid fire, or do we save this for next week?
Ben, start the clock.
Let's do it. Go.
Kyle Tucker's hot start.
Inevitable.
Braves 2-8.
I told you. Well, it's 3 words.
First place Angels.
Just wait.
Does Vladdy's contract make the Blue Jays buyers? Yes or no?
No.
Shadur Sanders.
Overrated.
Ashton Genty.
Underrated.
Aaron Rodgers Pittsburgh drama.
Usual Aaron Rodgers things.
Devin Williams early struggles.
Airbender.
To be honest, that's all I had prepared. So excellent.
It's good enough. The football kind of threw me off there. I wasn't expecting that Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, no, I told you baseball, but then the reason why you left it off was because there wasn't much to talk about.
Well, then you got into Shador and all that stuff. But anyways, thank you guys so much. Quickly, we'll do our yogiism that we're letting Josh rate. This week's yogiism, nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded.
I could have sworn that you're recycling these like every other week. Like
No,
you're
no.
saying what you said 2 weeks ago, or maybe it just sounds familiar because
It's
you
just
said
deja vu all over again for you. That's all it is. It's deja vu all over again for you.
You gotta give it a 10 if I remember it this much.
Love it. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Beyond the Score podcast. Comment away. Don't forget to call us crazy. Josh, quickly tell them where they can find us, and then we'll send them on their merry ways.
Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, and follow that Instagram.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.